something feels wrong in the air. You can't see it, you can't touch it, but you can feel it. Heavy, suffocating, everywhere. And the strangest thing is, no one seems to notice, or maybe they do, but pretend not to. We walk through the streets like elegant zombies, phones in hand, headphones in ears, calendars full, hearts drained. We laugh at parties, brag about being busy, post smiling photos online, but deep inside, something feels rotten, something's dying. We've never had so much freedom to buy, to choose, to switch jobs, bodies, even identities. And yet more young people wake up each morning wishing they hadn't. Anxiety has become normal. Loneliness has become a silent status symbol. And the worst part? We treat it like a phase, like a side effect of modern life. But what if it's not? What if we're all trapped inside one huge shared illusion? Look around. Kids are being medicated at 5 years old because they can't focus. Adults can't go 5 minutes without checking their phones. Couples share the same bed but sleep with headphones on to avoid talking. Neighbors snap out of nowhere. Women abandon everything and move to the countryside because they can't stand people anymore. These aren't rare stories, they're symptoms. Symptoms of what? Of a society that has quietly gone insane. Not as an accident, but as the new normal. This madness doesn't live in hospitals or padded rooms. It lives in our timelines, in our obsession with buying things we don't need, in our fear of being left behind, in our constant outrage disguised as strong opinions. This isn't a rant, it's an investigation. Over the next few minutes, we're going to peel back the layers of the collective mind, to confront dangerous ideas, to ask how we lost our sanity without even realizing it, and maybe find out who pushed us there and why. Most importantly, we'll ask if there's still a way out. What comes next won't be comfortable, but it might be the start of something freeing. There's a kind of pain that doesn't scream, it doesn't cry or bleed, it just settles, quiet, polite, invisible. You wake up, go to work, pay bills, text people, make plans, and still something inside you feels unfinished, like there's a hole that no success, no love, no amount of likes can fill. This pain has no clear cause, but it eats away at everything. And here's the truth, that emptiness isn't just yours, it's not personal, it's collective, a symptom of the modern world. And strangely, it was born from something we all celebrate, freedom. The philosopher Erich Fromm warned us long ago in Escape from Freedom. Modern man has escaped the chains of old authority, but that freedom left him lost and alone, drowning in anxiety. Freed from traditions, from communities, from sacred stories that once gave life structure, we were thrown into a world where everything is possible, but nothing means anything. Modernity promised liberation, but it delivered fragmentation. The promise of autonomy turned into a maze of empty choices. With no fixed values, we turn to productivity, consumption, performance. If you don't know who you are, you can at least show what you own or how much you suffer. Even pain became a kind of social currency. And none of this happened by mistake. When we broke away from the pillars that once held our collective mind together, religion, tradition, belonging, we became unanchored. The psychoanalyst Carl Jung saw it coming. Modern man doesn't realize how fragile his rationality is, or how dependent he is on invisible structures of meaning. Without them, he becomes part of a mass, and the mass does not think, it only reacts. And that's where our collective psychosis began. Think of the irony. We're never more connected, yet we're never more alone. We have endless information, but no wisdom. Infinite choices, but no direction. The new spirituality is the algorithm. The new confession booth is Twitter. The new altar is the mirror. And when everything becomes fluid, identity, truth, values, the individual doesn't grow. He dissolves. That's what we're living through, a quiet disappearance of the self. In its place, we see fragile, narcissistic beings constantly begging for validation. The psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who survived Auschwitz, saw this emptiness firsthand. He wrote, "Modern life suffers not from physical pain, but from a sense of emptiness, an existential vacuum. The mind needs meaning like the body needs food. Without it, people get sick. They buy, they eat, they scream, they follow gurus, but remain hungry." There's a kind of slavery that doesn't use chains. It doesn't whip the body. It hijacks the mind. It's the slavery of implanted ideas, manufactured opinions, and desires designed by invisible hands. And the cruel genius of it all? The victim believes they're free. Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud and the father of modern public relations, understood this perfectly. He once said, "The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in a democratic society." He wasn't being cynical, he was being technical. He knew exactly how the human mind worked, how anxiety and confusion made people desperate for direction, for authority, for comfort. And whoever controlled the channels of communication would control those minds. That principle became the foundation for everything that followed: totalitarian regimes, marketing, politics, media, advertising. George Orwell warned that whoever controls the past controls the future, and whoever controls the present controls the past. But Aldous Huxley saw something even more dangerous. What if control didn't come through pain, but through pleasure? What if people were trained to obey not by fear, but by entertainment? That's exactly what we have now, a world where distraction has become the main method of control. No one needs to imprison your body when your mind is already hypnotized by endless scrolling, shallow stories, short videos, and the constant chase for instant rewards. The digital world looks chaotic, but it's not. It's a carefully built system, a behavioral conditioning machine powered by data, fine-tuned by algorithms, and designed to feed mental addictions. Look closely at the apps you use. They all follow the same dopamine pattern: notification, like, scroll, reward. It's not coincidence, it's engineering. Tristan Harris, a former Google designer, admitted, "We're hacking the deepest vulnerabilities of human psychology." While that happens, even our language, the bridge between thought and reality, has been taken hostage. Words create meaning. Change the language of a society, and you change how people see the world. Orwell called this newspeak, a language designed to erase complex thought and prevent rebellion. Today it shows up as speech policing, ideological euphemisms, and deliberate confusion between fundamental concepts. When that happens, the individual loses their ability to think deeply. Their mind fragments. They can't tell what they feel from what they consume. Their beliefs are recycled from tweets. Their outrage is borrowed from headlines. Their sensitivity is shaped by videos with sad background music. None of this is accidental. It's intentional. A colonized mind is more profitable, more obedient, and more predictable. But there's a hidden ingredient that makes this mental control possible: fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being wrong, fear of thinking differently, fear of standing on the wrong side of history. There's a thin line between conviction and delusion, and when a crowd crosses that line together, something terrifying happens. Insanity becomes normal. What used to be madness turns into social acceptance. To think clearly in such a world becomes almost an act of rebellion. The scariest part? It all begins with good intentions, the desire to protect, to heal, to fix injustice, to make the world better. But history has shown that the most dangerous delusions often disguise themselves as virtue. Psychologist Matthias Desmet calls this phenomenon mass formation. It's when an anxious, isolated, and meaningless population clings to a collective narrative with religious passion, not because it's true, but because it gives them a sense of belonging. When people lose their connection to objective reality, they don't stop believing. They'll believe anything. The key to understanding this process is fear. Fear destroys rational thought. It doesn't just freeze people, it makes them outsource responsibility. That's why totalitarian systems, dogmatic ideologies, and mass movements thrive in times of chaos. Gustave Le Bon in The Crowd, a study of the popular mind, wrote, "The crowd never thirsts for truth. It demands illusions without which it cannot live. In a collective delusion, truth becomes offensive. Doubt becomes heresy. Discussion becomes threat. The group builds its own rules, its own facts, its own rituals, and it punishes anyone who dares to question them." The examples are endless. In 1930s Germany, one of the most educated societies on earth was seduced by a narrative of national purification. Professors, doctors, artists, brilliant minds supported absurd laws, justified persecution, and taught madness as truth. In the United States during McCarthyism, a whisper was enough to destroy reputations. The logic was simple: if you're not with us, you're against us. Today, the same logic lives online. The new delusion wears hashtags, spreads through virality, and gains power through likes. Instead of torches and uniforms, we have cameras and short clips, but the mechanism is the same. And there's a deep sadness in that. Many joined in not out of belief, but out of fear. They repeat ideological slogans not because they agree, but because they know that questioning comes with a price. Philosopher Michel Foucault once said, "There is no madness without institution. Society needs madness to define its normality." Today, perhaps madness hides inside hypernormality, in the excess of conformity, in the fear of disagreement, in the pressure to think alike. Some feel safe in that aquarium, like fish happy not to swim in the ocean. But the oxygen is running out. What happens when an entire civilization builds itself on distortion? When hysteria becomes a moral standard and coherence is punished? The lucid ones either withdraw, break down, or resist, but always alone. There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't come from the absence of people, but from the unbearable presence of truth. Clarity, in times of mass delusion, is a curse. It doesn't give you superiority, it gives you exile. Seeing clearly when everyone refuses to feels like screaming in a forgotten language. Those who still think don't belong. They watch absurdity spreading like a virus, contradictory speeches, reversed values, shifting norms. They realize something frightening. Staying sane now takes almost spiritual strength. Nietzsche once warned, "He who fights with monsters should see to it that he himself does not become a monster. And if you gaze long into the abyss also gazes into you." That's the silent tension of those who refuse to surrender to chaos. They must stay awake without losing their mind, resist without becoming bitter. But that's almost impossible because society doesn't tolerate the awake. The lucid disturb the comfort of the adapted. That's why many choose silence. They live quietly, on the edge, carrying a rare kind of courage. The courage to be misunderstood. So what happens when illusion replaces meaning? When survival depends not on truth, but on performance? People learn to mimic feeling instead of feeling it. They smile on camera, grieve in captions, rage in comments, love through filters. It's not hypocrisy, it's adaptation. In a world where attention is currency, authenticity becomes too expensive. Everyone is performing sanity while privately falling apart. The collapse isn't loud. It's quiet, subtle, and constant. It hides in the endless need to stay updated, to stay visible, to stay relevant. And yet behind every profile, there's a person quietly losing their inner world, bit by bit, scroll by scroll. The ancient idea of the soul has been replaced by the feed. The spiritual has become the digital. Instead of self-reflection, we have self-display. Instead of growth, we have branding. Instead of community, we have metrics. And this illusion feels good because it gives temporary relief. It keeps you from facing the one thing this system fears most: stillness. True stillness exposes emptiness. It forces you to face the silence beneath all your noise, and that silence is unbearable for a mind addicted to stimulation. Because in that silence, you see the truth, that everything you're running from is already inside you. That's why distraction is sacred now. It's not just entertainment, it's anesthesia. But here's the paradox. The more we try to escape pain, the more miserable we become. When the world promises constant pleasure, pain doesn't disappear, it multiplies. We've confused comfort with meaning and safety with purpose. A life built around avoiding discomfort becomes a slow suicide. You survive, but you don't live. You function, but you don't feel. You exist in fragments, half human, half algorithm. Somewhere in the distance, reality still exists. Nature still breathes. The body still aches. Silence still speaks. But the modern mind, overstimulated and overstretched, can't hear it anymore. It's like a radio stuck between frequencies, buzzing, restless, always searching, never arriving. That's not freedom. That's dependence, disguised as choice. Every illusion promises liberation, but delivers captivity. Every new convenience makes us weaker. Every digital advancement replaces one more human capacity. The more connected we become, the less we belong to anything real, to anyone real. And this is the true cost of the modern dream. We've become so obsessed with optimizing life that we've forgotten how to live it. We've engineered efficiency, but lost purpose. We've created abundance, but destroyed satisfaction. We've built a civilization capable of anything except peace. The philosopher Byung-Chul Han calls this the achievement society, a world where we exploit ourselves in the name of freedom. We call it hustle, growth, productivity, but it's still slavery, just self-inflicted. We've become both the master and the prisoner, the exploiter and the exploited. And every time we burn out, we call it progress. Depression has become the normal reaction to a sick environment. It's the soul's protest against the unbearable speed of existence. It's not weakness, it's clarity. It's what happens when the mind can no longer keep pretending that everything is fine. But instead of listening to that pain, we medicate it, we brand it, we monetize it, we turn suffering into content. The market digests everything, even despair. This is how the system sustains itself. It feeds on both your pleasure and your pain. Both become fuel for engagement. And once you see that, you understand that rebellion doesn't look like shouting or fighting. Real rebellion now is refusing to participate in the madness, refusing to trade your time, your focus, your depth for a few moments of validation, refusing to let your attention become a product. The quietest people may be the loudest rebels, the ones who unplug, who stay human, who live slowly in a fast world. They are the real radicals because they've remembered something the rest of us forgot, that freedom is not about having endless options, but about not needing them. Maybe that's the hidden hope buried under this cultural collapse, that enough people will wake up not through violence or outrage, but through exhaustion, that one day we'll be too tired to keep pretending, and in that exhaustion, we'll finally stop. And in stopping, we might finally feel again. That's the point where illusion starts to crack, when the chase becomes unbearable, when the performance breaks, when silence returns. The modern world has mistaken numbness for peace, but peace begins where numbness ends. It begins when you're brave enough to face reality without filters, without comfort, without distraction. That's where the mind stops being a puppet and starts remembering itself. But very few get there because the journey requires losing everything you thought mattered. It demands a kind of death, the death of the false self, the social self, the consumer self. Most people aren't ready for that. They want transcendence without loss, awakening without pain. But those two things can't be separated. Every rebirth demands a burial. Every freedom demands a letting go. Maybe that's why the truth feels so violent. It doesn't destroy the world, it destroys the illusions that made it bearable. And once those illusions die, there's no going back. You can't unsee the machinery of manipulation. You can't unknow the emptiness beneath the spectacle. You can't fall asleep again once you've seen what you were dreaming inside of. You either go insane trying to forget, or you start to wake up. Waking up doesn't look like enlightenment. It looks like loss. The loss of illusions, the loss of belonging, the loss of everything that once felt certain. When you begin to see the machinery, the invisible strings pulling the collective mind, you realize how fragile human sanity really is. You start to see that civilization itself is built on shared hallucinations, money, progress, morality, identity. Remove belief from any of these and they collapse. Most people can't handle that collapse, so they cling tighter to the dream. They need the story, even if it kills them. The mind prefers a painful illusion to a meaningless truth. That's the paradox of awakening. It doesn't make you happy, it makes you honest. You see the world not as it should be, but as it is. You see how much of what we call good is rooted in fear, how much of what we call love is rooted in need. You realize that society doesn't want individuals, it wants participants. People who will keep the machine running, who will consume, obey, reproduce, and die quietly. To step outside that rhythm is to become dangerous. That's why prophets are always crucified, philosophers exiled, visionaries mocked. The crowd forgives anything except clarity, because clarity is contagious, and it threatens the order built on lies. The lucid ones walk a lonely path. They learn to live without comfort, to find peace not in pleasure but in truth. And the truth is this: the world was never designed for happiness. It was designed for survival. Everything beyond that is invention, narrative, distraction, anesthesia. To live consciously inside such a world is to suffer more deeply, but also to love more truthfully. Because love, stripped of illusion, is not romantic. It's sacrificial. It means caring in a world that devours itself, staying gentle in a system that rewards cruelty, remaining awake when everyone else is dreaming. Real freedom has nothing to do with escaping society. It's about seeing through it and still choosing to act with integrity. To be human in an age of dehumanization is resistance. To think when thinking is forbidden is rebellion. To feel when numbness is the norm is revolution. You don't need to fight the system. You only need to stop feeding it. Every act of awareness is a crack in the structure. Every moment of stillness weakens the machinery. Every refusal to participate in collective madness brings you closer to sanity. And maybe that's where redemption hides, not in grand revolutions, but in small awakenings, in how one person decides to stay real, in how someone refuses to turn their pain into performance, in how a single human heart chooses to remain open in a collapsing world. The delusion may still surround you, but it no longer owns you. You become an observer, not a captive. You see how fear moves through people, how desire manipulates them, how stories shape their morality. And instead of judging, you start to understand. Because awakening is not superiority, it's empathy without illusion. You don't wake up to escape humanity. You wake up to see it clearly, to forgive its blindness, to navigate its madness without losing your soul. Maybe the world won't change. Maybe the dream will keep repeating, the same mistakes, the same cycles, the same suffering dressed in new words. But that doesn't matter. What matters is whether you stay conscious inside the repetition, whether you can stand inside the storm without becoming part of it. The lucid ones will always be few. They'll walk through life unseen, often misunderstood, carrying the quiet dignity of those who know. They'll love without possession, speak without persuasion, act without reward. They'll build small pockets of sanity, conversations, friendships, art, silence, that keep the sacred alive. And when everything around them collapses, they'll still be standing, not because they were strong, but because they were real. In a world addicted to delusion, the most radical act is to stay awake. Not to preach, not to fix, but simply to be the proof that clarity is possible. That even in the deepest darkness, awareness can still burn quietly, unnoticed, unstoppable, eternal.